Thank you so much. This question is for, or comment, is for Hannah Abbasian. Um, so the identification piece is really, really important. And as you stated in your interview, with Qadr that she's so you were expressing that she's Somali. And so that's different than Somali Canadian. And that part about her being Somali Canadian is really, really important because of who her audience is, who is not just as stated those in the Middle East. She has she's an international audience. And so the defining of Black Africana diasporic Muslim is just really important culturally and for your findings. And I just want to say the amounts of attacks that happens in combination with anti-Blackness in the Ummah um, is real and vast. In that there is a book by Zainab Kaba, who is a Black American slash um, Africana diasporic Muslim woman who lives in the UK, works at Oxford, and works on education and digital media. Her book is called Knowledge, Authority, and Islamic Education in the West. And it's about knowledge production in amongst Western Muslims and the Muslim education industrial complex. I love how you pointed out that for many people who are like Qadr, that religious knowledge has become a commodity, and that push on social media to commodify is strong. And right now, one of the trending commodities is Muslim coaching. So everybody has like this Muslim coaching business, and it is international. And thank you for introducing us to the term SWANA. But I think that as a Somali Canadian, that Qadr is able to move throughout certain audiences and is more accepted than if she was just Somali without the Somali Canadian, as she's been on the Tamron Hall show, which is a huge television show in the United States, and she appeared with her niqab with someone who is Christian, with someone who is Jewish, and they tried. She was herself. She was very comfortable, but they tried their best because they didn't know what to do because she was wearing a face cover. And um, uh, other invitations, like at the Mujadala conference in Doha, but the hyper visibility and invisibility for Black Africana diasporic Muslim women is very, very real.
Yes. Yeah, thanks so much for this comment. I believe you raised such an important point that can actually be added to the manuscript and further publication. As an individual who doesn't hold any Western citizenship, what you mentioned out is truly real. Like for Muslim scholars who live in diaspora but hold the citizenships of countries that are so-called developing world or so-called being seen as the third world, can create many, many different barriers. And of course, unfortunately, we're living in a world that such structural factors are very important. The color of passport you hold or the color of citizenship you hold is very important. So thanks so much for raising this point. And yeah, I've also watched her presence in different media, and I really admire the fact that she is always very open and very warm and very comfortable with expressing her identity and ideas. So yeah, thanks so much. I truly appreciate your comment. It's such an important point.
Thank you.
Do we have,
I mean, is there someone on the chart?
I don't see anyone.
Okay.
If you're on the chat and you want to ask a question, please do the hand raise. But Rahina has a question.
Okay, thank you so much, Hannah, for this, for your amazing presentation. I have a quick question. First, I really like the terms you use, hyper visibility and invisibility. If you could, briefly say more about that. And I was thinking, especially in the context of this conference, whether you may consider Mahmoud, the subject of your research, as part of like emerging, or sort of, how do I put this? Like a new form of preaching, if we can consider, like the podcast she does as a kind of new form of digital space that Muslim women preach, quote unquote. Yeah, so I would like to hear, your thought on that. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much for your interest. I truly appreciate it. And as I mentioned in the presentation, in the digital age, actually, it's very, very easier for all of us to produce content if we have access to media. So, for example, Dr. Imam Omar Suleiman, who is based in the US, for example, provides lots of videos, YouTube videos, has digital media and content production. And Muslim Americans and all Muslim youth all around the world can watch him and understand his message. This was not possible in the past. For example, your imam at your local mosque would preach your community, would advise your community, or maybe close cities. But it was almost close to impossible for that imam in the local mosque to preach a message towards the whole world. Of course, we have many amazing scholars and imams in the past who their work, their books, their publications are inspiring and advising Muslim youth even till today. But it was very hard for them to actually spread their message globally and let people understand their knowledge, their message, their ilm and ihsan all around the world. So you're right. I believe this is a new type of preacher that is emerging in our age. And expanding upon the term hypervisibility, invisibility, this is a very well-known term in the literature of social sciences. And what exactly it explains is that when you have an intersectional or a racialized, marginalized identity, parts of your identity and selfhood is very visible to everyone, and parts of your identity and selfhood is not visible to anyone. Like an example I can make as an Iranian woman is that when I say I'm from Iran, most people may associate my experiences with instability, conflict, or oppression. This is a hyper visibility that I bring to the table. So when I bring up my identity, people at the table may have some thoughts or news and media in their minds. The part of me that they won't see is like, for example, I want to talk about Persian poetry. I want to talk about Persian philosophy. I want to talk about Persian art. I want to talk about Islamic art in general. And this is the parts that are not appreciated enough. So when I was talking with Adar, she also expresses the same concerns that when it comes to Muslim women from different regions of the world, their intellect, their knowledge, their philosophy, art, their science is not seen much, is not appreciated. But unfortunately, their pain and suffering and the painful stories all around the world are being seen in a very biased way, in a way that it reduces them, it limits their agency, it makes them just an oppressed object, nothing more, not a human, not a being. So this is what the hypervisibility, invisibility thing, the complex means, or the paradox means. And we can see this a lot in the media generally for both Muslim men and women. They feel misrepresented and not heard, and they feel that some aspects of their identity are falsely and biasly, wrongly overrepresented and some parts of them are not represented at all. So thanks so much for listening to me, and I really appreciate your comment.
Rika as well. Mr. Farika.
Oh, okay.
has-
Go ahead.
Maybe no one is in the chat, right?
I don't see it.
Okay. Yeah, and I have a question for Rika. Thank you so much, Rika, for your presentation too. And so while you were presenting, one of the things I was thinking about is data collection. You know, I know your topic is sensitive, and I will be very much interested in knowing, you know, how you collected your data, how you were able to, you know, make your interviewees trust you with sensitive issues like this. And also, if you could say something about the geography, or if I could say the scope, like, did you collect data, for instance, you know, here in Lawrence, in Kansas City, I don't know, anywhere in the US, since you are, you know, focusing on African migrant women. And you also mentioned the concept of mubadala, which you translated as the reciprocity model. So I'm not, I think the only time I saw that is in the context of, you know, Southeast Asian Muslims, Indonesia, I think, to be specific. So I think it might help. This is a suggestion from me. You don't have to take it. But I think, you know, it might help your paper if you mention, for instance, you introduce a concept, especially, you know, with regards to, I don't know, Muslim marital issues, maybe briefly mention where you got that concept from, what scholar uses the concept, or, you know, your sources. And because I know in the context of, you know, at least in West Africa, what usually when it comes to peaceful coexistence between spouses, the term mentioned is, you know, the mu'ashara bil ma'ruf wa ashiruhunna bil ma'ruf. You know, that is what we use. As I said, I have never had anyone use the term mubadala. So yes, and I think even with regards to the data collection, again, I know you anonymize. I mean, I think you do anonymize the interviewees, but maybe, you know, try to add some, I don't know, you know, give them pseudonyms or anything to be able to guide their, you know, the reader. I mean, I can see more. I think my thoughts are all over now. I'm tired. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Thank you so much for your feedback and your comments and questions. So first one, as far as that data gathering, so my research was done in Texas. So I said Dallas metropolitan area. That's where I did my my dissertation. At least that part of the study was done in Texas. So it's a continuation and building on. So you asked about how hard it was as far as I had to reach groups. So it was very difficult. So what I did was I interviewed participants in DIAD, and I used snowball sampling, in which I first identified. So I put out flyers, I used social media to advertise the study, and participants reached out to me. And then after they did, I screened them. I had a set of questions in which I screened them to make sure that they met eligibility. And then I asked them to refer someone else. So that was a way that I was able to get, as far as build trust, I was able to get them to like snowball sample and recruit for me. So participants definitely like supported a lot of my study by referring other people that they may have within their communities that may be experiencing or have experienced similar things. So it took a while. I did not get the sample size that I was expecting, but it was enough to you know, gather enough information. So that as far as your first question. And then your second question about the term that I use, I think I didn't put as much information on the presentation. I added the source in the paper, so my apologies for not mentioning that in the presentation. And I will definitely go back and research the term that you mentioned that is more common within sub-Saharan African, as that is where my study, most of my participants, or all of my participants, were from that region. So again, I don't know, maybe because of where I was geographically in the Dallas area. So I'll be curious to see when I replicate the study around, like here in Kansas, where participants will be located from. But like me being in Texas at that time, attracted me to that group. So I had a lot of Nigerians, I had Ghana, I had Ivory Coast, I had Liberia, I had some from the south and eastern part of Africa. I didn't get any from north, so it was mainly sub-Saharan, like I stated. I don't know, did I answer all the questions? What else?
Yes, you did. Thank you so much.
Okay.
I have a very simple, quick question for Hannah and then a comment for Rikta.
Okay.
Hannah, I'm just, we've talked a lot over the past 2 days about the comments that women who preach online get and how that puts a kind of pressure on them, especially like on Facebook, Instagram. I'm wondering about women who have podcasts, Muslim women who have podcasts. Is there a lot of, I don't know, I honestly don't know. Is there a lot of commenting? Do they get pressure from that to not say certain things because of comments?
That's such an interesting question. Actually, when I conducted this interview with Adar, she told me one of the main problems in the digital content creation for Muslim women was that they don't get enough credit for what they create. For example, she saw many incidents that the content she was creating was taken away without her consent, was presented again, was commodified, especially by fellow male counterparts, like people who also produce podcasts and are men. And she didn't receive enough credit. Like they didn't say this is originally coming from the Digital Sisterhood podcast. Adding on top of that, in my research, actually, literature confirms that visual narrations usually get less targeted hate or less targeted Islamophobia than, auditory narrations get less hate or targeted Islamophobia than visual narrations. So, for example, when the Muslim content creators come in front of camera or produce a video, that is more probable to get hate comments than just narrating a story. But of course, the main challenge here is that in the Digital Sisterhood, in lots of episodes, you can see stories from all across the North Africa and the Middle Eastern region. And talking about these topics has always been sensitive. So expressing any kind of political opinion or any kind of psychosocial opinion sometimes can be very risky for both the host and the guest. So this is one of the main challenges that many times in the podcast, the guest is being anonymized or their name is not mentioned, just to protect them from the online hate and discrimination. And building on top of one of the comments that was made after my presentation, I want to also mention that holding a Canadian citizenship, of course, gives the host some sort of protection. Of course, she experiences online hate and online anti-Black racism and misogyny because she's a niqabi storyteller. But at the same time, holding this Western citizenship is definitely a shield, is definitely something that protects her from further online discrimination. Specifically because in the Western countries, there are established rights against online hate and discrimination. Of course, it's not always ideally conducted, but it's there. But if, for example, someone who doesn't hold this privilege comes towards camera or comes towards podcast production, that would be more risky for them. But in general, usually auditory narrations are a safer space. And because specifically for Muslim women in social media or digital media, there are lots of comments made about their appearance instead of the message they're delivering. And the auditory narration kind of protects them from that kind of hate.
Thank you. That's very interesting. I just wanted to say to Rika that it was really nice to have your presentation be the closing presentation, because we've been talking a lot about women, both from the ground up, and today a lot about institutionalizing women's authority. But to hear a presentation that was actually about women's lives and and the way in which religious talk influences or speaks to their struggles, I thought was really a nice way to close off sorry, it's not a question, it's just a comment.
Okay, thank you.